Hey, everybody, and welcome to our conversation on the latest research from the Sales Management Association on go-to-market planning and high-performing sales organizations. My name is Curtis Schroeder. I'm here today with James Mulligan. And James, one of the main things that stood out from this report was part of it that took place right before COVID. 93% of the organizational leaders that they talked to said that they had experienced moderate to high levels of change in the previous 3 years. And this was 2018, 2019, little did they know what was coming right around the corner. But even at that point in time, they said, I think 68%, 70% of them said they believe that future change would be even faster. So let's talk about it. Do you feel like that prophecy has been fulfilled? Do you feel like the pace of change is picking up? What's your observation on that?
The pace of change, the frequency of change, the requirement to deal with change, it's just been more than probably anybody could have imagined over the past few years, especially during post-pandemic. I think it's really interesting because it's about not only the pace of change, but actually being able to adapt to that change that organizations are really feeling. But listen, I think slightly tongue in cheek, there's a lot of change out there. Yeah. But what I think we want to talk about today is what's different. Why organizations, why individuals should be interested in this, and what does the report really do to highlight some of the things that we can start doing today in day to day. And I think the first thing that really pops out to me is data. And it is the access to data, the availability of different data sources and areas where you can get data, but also the fact that a lot of users, a lot of individuals have been craving data for so long, and now they're getting more and more access to it. That's really accelerating the ability to do analysis and therefore the ability to want to invest in or investigate change.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, like you kind of indicated, 5, 6, 10 years ago, whatever it might be, this was always the desired end state, was to have all this data to say we're moving away from intuition and actually driving our decisions based on data and be able to predict and look at historical data, all these things. I wonder if we've almost gotten to this oversaturation of data at this point, where people are overwhelmed by information, overwhelmed by the options, and not entirely sure what to do with it. I imagine we'll probably reach an equilibrium. I think technology is going to be a huge part of that, of helping us make sense of data and connect data to help make stronger decisions. But one thing that really stood out about this is that even if the data is important and we're using that to drive our decisions, a lot of the companies that are using that data are using it to drive and manage change in two different ways. And I think the report calls this out in a helpful way, in that while revenue is still the number one goal, we're in the face of this change. The companies that are going to be most successful are not just the ones that can say, change is happening around me, what do I do about it? That's still really important. But it's more simply, how do I actually predict and anticipate that change? And that's where I feel like that connectivity of data is going to be helpful to us. We're not going to be able to predict and respond perfectly to everything that happens around us, especially when we're talking about global disruption and economic circumstances and whatever the thing might be, that triggered event that might drive some sort of need for change. But really, the companies that are going to be able to do this well are those that can use the data that they have, use the systems that they have to anticipate change and take advantage of the potential for change.
And I think that the ability for organizations to do that is sort of rooted in this idea of a change mindset, and everybody in the organization really adopting it, right from the leadership all the way down to individuals and individual contributors. It reminds me of a story that I was speaking to a partner of ours, or organization we partner with over here, and they're really looking at how to continually invest in and continually drive change within their sales organization. And what they've done is, instead of just focusing on change management, they actually have a project manager for change. And what that individual's job is looking across the sales organization and trying to understand what areas are ripe for change, so that anticipation that you're talking about, but also when the change does come, how do they adopt that change? How do they find the right impacts across, if I do something in incentives, what's the impact of sales planning? If I do something in forecasting, what's the impact in our overall budget? All those different things and the connectivity that's there, they're trying to understand what that change is and managing that change at an organizational level. And it's just showing that organizations are continually adopting new ways to deal with change.
I think that's right. There was a company that we partnered with for a long time that we were talking with the other day, and we were talking about the potential of shifting go-to-market strategies and what that really looks like, and And the reality is, and they brought this up, that the changing of go-to-market models and strategies, it's not just that it's a good idea, it's a really expensive decision to make. Like maybe if you're choosing to go down a new distribution path, you're working and selling through channels, you're trying to enter a new geography, maybe those things like on their head appear to be really important or really fruitful. We've done our market assessment, we know there's great opportunity there, but actually shifting your internal go-to-market model in that way is really an expensive, both in time and resources, to be able to do that. So I guess the question like becomes then, how do you effectively assess that decision? How do you move from just the potential of that change to actually, I think that the report calls out this idea of being change capable, actually being able to anticipate and act on that change.
Yeah, one of our partners used the term that everyone needs to be an agent of change, and I really like that. And I think there's been a paradox previously where it's like, oh, we want to change, but change is hard, and it's really we can no longer look at it that way. I think we have to look at it as, listen, looking at change, anticipating change, adopting change is really important. And it's an important part of my job as an individual. It's an important job of the sales organization as a whole. And we really need to make sure that as we continue to look at this, that we recognize, yeah, okay, it's hard, but it's an important part of what we're doing and what we're doing here, because it's not going away. And that really starts right from the top all the way down to the individuals, as I mentioned before. But I think it's also important that leaders give the ability for individuals to experiment and to try, and that it's okay sometimes to realize that if we're looking at this pace, that sometimes things may not be 100% correct, but we've got the confidence to be able to move forward with it. And I think that really is pulled out in the report, and the way that it talks about organizations that are at the forefront of change and being able to effectively adapt or adopt.
And I think that even just beyond the change itself, one thing that we hear all the time now is that planning at the organizational level and some of these big systemic things we might do internally at our companies, that's not just an annual activity anymore, right? Like we might have a path that we planned out for the year. We spent 3 to 4 months building that plan. We rolled it out on day one. But the reality is there's going to be roadblocks to that plan. There's going to be shifts in that plan. And so we've got to be able to face and adapt. And I think there's some data that I saw recently. It was like 93% of organizations or leaders in organizations believe that they would like to do more planning and adjustments more frequently, but only 30% of them actually, or whatever it was, like only actually have the ability to do it. And so I think firms want to be able to change more frequently. They feel they need to change more frequently in the face of either disruption that's happening in their business or changes, or even more positive things like opportunity, right? But the time and the effort that it's going to take to do that is just overwhelming. And so we're thinking about this as, how are we placing our bets? How do we take control of what we can control? But importantly, when the rubber hits the road here, oftentimes we find like our teams are disconnected. The people are disconnected in that planning process. You talked about data earlier. The data that we're using is disconnected or outdated. Even if we have access to it, is this the latest? Data is changing so quickly. The access that we have, can we even trust what we had, or we were trying to base a decision on last week or last month or even yesterday in some cases, right? So I think sometimes our tools are prohibitive. So I guess it's just a really hard activity that we need to overcome. A lot is stacked against us in those planning efforts, and the bets that we're trying to place are more and more risky in some ways.
Yep. And then you add in AI to that, and it becomes an additional layer to that story where, there's all these things going on around it. And I know we'll probably talk about that in another episode, but it's really interesting in terms of, not only the data you have, but the data that's going to be coming, or what's the anticipation or the opportunities that are out there. So yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head in terms of ensuring that confidence in change.
Well, revenue is still goal number one. The ideal here in the face of this, the positive way to move forward with this, right? All of our people, all the ways that we interact with people, the planning processes that we engage in, the data that we use to inform that, we need to be working in harmony. And hopefully the tools, the conversations, the things that we do with our customers and what we know is going on in the market, that's the goal, to be working those things in harmony, to understand and be able to really maximize where those handoffs are between processes. It's easier said than done, but that's definitely the goal, the objective for sure.